Hello and welcome to another edition of Redleg Roundtable. I am Seth Shaner and I'm so pleased today to welcome in Reds Director of Media Relations, Jamie Ramsey. Jamie, thanks for taking the time.
I appreciate you asking me to come on, Seth. What a pleasure.
Well, I've long known about you. I want to get into that a little bit later as far as following your blog and things like that over the years. But certainly just want to catch up with you and talk about everything Reds, kind of more the way you grew up watching them and things like that. And then maybe a little bit of the current stuff too. Yeah. So you are the Director of Media Relations for the Reds. You're a Hamilton, Ohio native. What high school did you go to?
I went to Hamilton High.
All right, Hamilton High. Yeah. And then you were at Miami. And but I guess in 1997, you joined the Reds organization as a member of the grounds crew.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's usually the way people go to get into the front office, right? That's the standard way to do it.
Yeah. I don't know about that, but that's the way I did it. I was taking classes at Miami. I was actually a commuter at the time, so I was commuting from my home in Hamilton. I was living with my parents. I had just came back from a stint at Central Michigan University, where I was a freshman there, and then transferred back home to Miami. Best decision I ever made. But I was commuting to Miami, and a couple of my good friends got on with the Reds ground crew in '96, and I was envious of them because I grew up as a huge Reds fan. All three of us are big Reds fans. So I said, hey, if there's anything that opens up, I'd be interested in coming on. If you guys need an extra guy, I was pleading with them, like, And then the following year in '97, it happened. In May of '97, someone left, and they asked if I was interested. I said absolutely, and the rest is kind of took care of itself. Where I got in and started working on the ground crew in May of '97. I only worked in '97 through, I think, August. Mm-hmm. So when classes started back up, because I needed to get my my academics in order to move forward. And then all of '98, all of the magical '99 season, which was by far my favorite year in Reds baseball. And then I ended up getting after I graduated from Miami, I got a job in the front office as a merchandise person, which at the time we had merchandise in-house. I mean, now it's kind of out to Delaware North takes care of all of our merchandise. But we had a very, very, very small merchandise department. I was part of that, and I was thankful to have the full-time job, but just really didn't enjoy the work. I was in a back warehouse of Riverfront Stadium, kind of folding shirts, doing some customer service, shipping some stuff out. And I felt like I could have done this anywhere, like in a Walmart or whatever. And it just didn't feel like I was working for the Reds. And it's not something I went to school for, but I had my foot in the door. So an internship in the media relations department popped up. And I decided to sacrifice the comfort of having a full-time job with benefits to take on an internship in a field that I was more equipped to handle and appreciated more. And that's what I did. And ever since then, I've been in the media relations department.
Well, let's go backwards a little bit. Growing up in Hamilton, I assume that means you're a Reds fan. Tell me about growing up as a Reds fan. We recently did a couple episodes with the hosts here on the Riverfront where we talked about why are you a Reds fan? And of course, if we don't work for the team, sometimes as a fan, it gets a little more difficult when the losses come more often. But I will say, we all that are lifelong Reds fans, we're there for a reason. So what sparked your Reds fanhood?
I think, I ask myself this sometimes from time to time, and I can't really pinpoint it. I think it was, I just kind of grew up playing baseball and t-ball when I was really young. And the game was always on in the background. My grandfather was a huge Reds fan. My dad enjoyed the games. I was playing, and then I started collecting baseball cards. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. Everything kind of like the baseball cards, the game being on TV. I grew up in Hamilton where Joe Nuxall is God there. and it all came together, and it was a natural fit for me. And then, you just kind of like, just like everybody else, it kind of gets into your system, and you become a Reds fan. That's how it
Mhm.
was for me. My dad, we grew up in a kind of a blue collar area of Hamilton. Some would say all of Hamilton's blue collar, but we particularly lived in an area where, we didn't have a whole lot of extra money to spend. But my dad worked at a factory, and from time to time, he would get free tickets to go to Riverfront Stadium to watch the Reds, and so he knew that I would like to do that. I never got to. I never had that chance. He never had that chance really. So he would take me, and we would go to 4 or 5 games a year, until I was old enough to start school, and taking being able to take myself to the game. So it just started from when I was a young kid playing t-ball and collecting baseball cards, into
Mm.
my dad taking me to the games, and it's something that I I really appreciate, because the time I got to spend with my grandfather when he was still alive, we spoke a lot. We talked a lot about Reds baseball, and when I got the job here, he was thrilled. And
Yeah.
he would always ask me about only things that I probably would know, and I'd always give him books that we'd get through the department, like Baseball America minor league books and stuff
Mhm.
like that he would appreciate.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's funny you talked about kind of you had to worry about school and things like that, but you're able to return. Like I had Marty Brenneman on. We talked to him about 6 months ago or so, and I shared a story with him. I met Marty in 1999 down at the South Regional of the NCAA tournament, and he put me in touch with Rob Butcher at the time.
Yeah.
But I never talked to Rob until like I guess it was May.
Hmm.
And at Ohio State, we were on quarters, so we went into June. Like it was almost mid-June by the time we were out of school at Ohio State, and of course that's 2 hour drive. And Rob was talking to me about internships and things like that, but by that point it was just too late, and there was no way the work I was doing with like student radio and stuff like that at Ohio State, like I couldn't match it up. And
Right.
so I
Yeah.
never did go down and intern and work for the Reds, but I do remember having those conversations. And so knowing your timeline, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I recognize that era certainly.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
well, tell me, I guess, real quick, tell me a little bit about being on the grounds crew at a stadium with AstroTurf.
Yeah, a lot of people make fun of me, like, oh
Yeah.
wow, you didn't have a whole lot of work to do, did you? But it was actually really hard work. It was my specific job was the pitcher's mound, so
Mhm.
I worked a lot with the clay on the pitcher's mound, and the base. If you guys, for those watching, for those of you that remember Riverfront, you had the mat. Everything was like carpeted except for the bases, the
Mm.
mound, and home plate. Those were the only dirt areas, although the mound was clay. There was no
Sure.
dirt. Never put dirt on on the mound. And then I worked the bullpens, patched the bullpens after games and before games. But it was great. It was I was never in a fraternity in college,
Mhm.
but the group I was with on the ground crew, especially in '99, we were all so tight knit. We all became friends. We all knew each other very well. We all enjoyed hanging out with each other outside of work. And the things that we got to do, was just fantastic. I mean, part of our job was going up on top of the roof of Riverfront to change the flags,
Mm.
by order of standings. So that was fun. Got to that was just an amazing experience. But the people that we got to meet and come into contact with was unbelievable, and the job was really rewarding. The players really appreciated the work that we did, to the point that after Reds wins in '99, um, we lined up as well in the high five line. So that was really cool. And they all made sure before they went to the clubhouse to high five all of us. So
Okay.
we felt like we were part of the team. Although it's kind of silly to think that we were just workers on the field, but it
Oh yeah.
felt good, and it was really rewarding, and it was something that we were part of it. We got to see every game live in action right there, so it was really cool.
Well, so we just kind of finished up, obviously, the 25th season anniversary of that 1999 season. And for those of us around the age that you and I are, I'm a little younger maybe, but I remember the 1990 World Series, right? I love that, but I was in
Mhm.
like sixth grade.
Yeah.
And 1999 rolls around, and my college roommate, he was from Dayton, and his family through their business had season tickets. And so we would come down. I mean, moments notice sometimes, but we
Yeah.
would come down and watch the games. And the 1999 season is my favorite Reds team of all time, even though they didn't even make the playoffs. But
Right.
part of that goes to, and it's kind of what happened in 2023 as well. Part of that goes to there's so many younger guys, and the fact that they would do that with you, and the fact that Sean Casey's involved certainly doesn't surprise me. But the fact that they would kind of include you a little bit there, it smacks as a group of guys aside from maybe Vaughn and Harnish and Larkin and some of those older guys. It's a group of guys that maybe don't know any better than they don't take you for granted. They're like appreciative of the work you guys are doing and the things you're doing, and you are kind of part of the quote unquote team. Was that kind of how it felt with all those younger guys and the fact that they were kind of coming up together, and you were about their age probably?
That's what I was going to say. It was like a lot of us were kind of around the same age as some of the younger guys. I was at the time, I think I was just 22, 23, 22. But it was like that. It was like those guys, like they would come in and like, they'd play pranks on some of the guys. They'd see us playing cards and bring stuff in for us. I know one of my favorite stories is Deion Sanders, when he was on the team, he had these Nike batting gloves that were specifically custom made for him. They said prime time on them.
Yeah.
He came in one day while we were playing cards before, after all of our work was done and before the game started, and just dumped a box of them on our table. And, that was really cool because, a lot of people would think, oh, he gave, having batting gloves, that was cool. But a lot of us most of us on the ground crew needed batting gloves as to work. Like they were our work gloves. And he saw that and recognized that. And, he was, he paid attention to us. So he saw that we needed batting gloves and brought us primetime batting gloves to use, while we were, working.
Yeah.
Because when you're rolling that tarp and it's hot, that tarp, there's nothing hotter. It'll give you blisters on your hands. So it worked out from that way, and then many other ways too. But, Michael Tucker bought us all shoes, like Nike shoes. Pete Harnish would bring in like food for us. I mean, it was unbelievable. And those guys genuinely liked us. And again, we felt like we were part of it. And, just the whole year when they were winning, they weren't expected to win, was amazing. And it's something I'll never forget.
Well, certainly those of us who were around then feel the same way. You go to work you start out with the internship, as you already mentioned, for the media relations team. Rob Butcher basically became an institution with the Reds. He was there for many, many years before retiring a year or two ago. I know I actually had a friend who was and Rob got his start in Columbus, I think, but
Yeah.
I have a friend who was the media relations director of the Clippers, the Columbus Clippers up here for just like 1 or 2 years. And it's a lot of work, especially at the minor league level, because you don't have as many people on staff. But
Right.
talk about kind of the labor of love when it comes to maybe the hours you have to put in and some of the long days.
Well, you brought up Rob, and I'd be remiss not to, just, talk about him for a second and just try to talk about how much he means to me personally.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a father figure to me, even though he's not old enough to be my father. But he's just so wise. He's just a pro's pro. Has been for many years. Everything that I know in this business is because of him. And just watching him and how his way of going about doing this job is unmatched. And just I've never been around somebody whose first instinct was always right and was always so quick. And I've always been jealous of that, and how awesome he is, and like thinking on his feet, and how being able to take care of problems, or tackling issues the way that Rob could. And it was 99.9% of the time the right way to do it. And I'm still in touch with Rob. I just saw him a couple days ago. So it's great to have him. He's my role model, and he's still around, and he's still able to help me out. But as
That's
far as
awesome.
the day to day, we're kind of we're in November now, which is kind of our slow period. If you talk to anybody that's worked in baseball for a long time who's married, they probably get married in November, like I did, like my colleagues did. Um, but pretty soon we're going to start ramping up our production of the 2025 Reds Media Guide.
Hmm.
And a lot of you know what a media guide is. It's a book that contains all the information for the upcoming season, all the player bios and whatnot. As far as another thing in the off season is I'll be going to the winter meetings in Dallas the first week of December. Then after that comes the caravan, and that's in late January before spring training starts. And all this time, we're trying to put together a 500-page book, which is the media guide,
Right.
which is keeps us on our toes, keeps us busy. Then spring training starts, and I'll head out to Goodyear for a month and a half. Come back, season starts, bam, and your day to day is write the game notes, facilitate media interviews with our players and coaches and front office if that comes up. Tackle whatever comes up during the day. Make sure everybody's prepared for the game. Watch the game. Do the scorebook in the game. Come back the next day. Do it all over again. Write the game notes. We also have interns that we manage. We produce a lot of material, such as not only the game notes, but we do a minor league report. We provide stats. We put a lot of stuff on Reds Press Box. We take video post-game interviews, video of our post-game interviews, and put them on our redspressbox.com for the media. It's just make sure all the media and everything is up to date with what's going on in Reds world.
Now, earlier in your career, and as the internet was kind of evolving and things like that, I know you had your Better Off Red blog that became a part of Reds.com at some point. And then you were very active, and we don't need to go into everything, but you were very active in Twitter. And I do want to tell you that your presence there as a daily part of Reds Twitter is missed, even after a while now. I know you probably had to deal with your share of the lineup, people not liking the lineups, and I remember you always directing those towards C. Trent Rosecrans, and that was kind of a running gag for the last 15 years or so. But talk a little bit about that era of kind of as media relations evolved in the internet era, your blog, and you always took you weren't being a beat writer. Mark Sheldon's done that for many years for Reds.com, MLB.com, and there's plenty of other folks who do that. But you kind of took us inside a little bit, a peek into kind of day to day and things like that.
Yeah, I wanted it to be, and I found the perfect way to explain it to folks was if the Reds were your breakfast cereal, I wanted Better Off Red to be the back of the cereal box where all the the fun stuff is, and I wanted to keep it light and friendly and and as pro Reds as I possibly could. And sometimes we'd hit peaks and valleys on that for sure. But for the most part, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. And we got to do some things with the players that was always fun. And I think the blog was well received for a long time. So, as I progressed in this department, it became a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I kind of had and I was also I wanted to be kind of true to myself as far as how a Reds fan sees it. This is more particular specifically to my my time on Twitter was, I'm still I'm still a Reds employee. I'm a PR person for the Reds. So I didn't want to, I found myself tweeting things that I didn't really agree with because I was the mouthpiece. I was on the front lines of the organization. So, after a few times doing that, I asked, I had to do some soul searching, like, I'm doing the right thing for the organization. But, I think people can read through it if it's not authentic.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not authentic, then I don't want to be doing it. And so that's when I began starting to, kind of fade out a little bit Twitter particularly, but also the blog. The blog was always like something I'd never, I always put my heart and soul into it and try to make it fresh and try to make it funny and try to keep it light. So, and I think for the most part, I succeeded on that. But,
Absolutely.
as I got older, I have 2 kids now and, and things, the world changes a little bit, the platform changed a lot. The team has changed a lot. So I thought it was time for me to step back.
I get it. I get it. And I remember even evolving online. Like I remember even like so C Trent was with the Post, and they would have like a running blog on his game
Yeah.
capsule or whatever it was, and then a lot of those people ended up on Twitter, and somehow we found each other, and
Yeah.
and like there's so many people I've never met or really know that I know because of the Reds, and it doesn't mean we're best friends or something, but it's like, oh, I know them since way back when, and it's kind of
Yeah.
an ongoing thing. It's pretty cool. Also, though, I remember on your blog the banner, and I've seen you in your office before on videos and things like that. You are an avid collector of bobbleheads.
I
Uh,
was.
you were. Oh no.
Yeah. I actually, I purged a couple
Oh.
years ago and relieved myself of the whole bobbleheads. Most of them. I still have some that really mean a lot to me. I have some that I've kind of tucked away and kept at home, but for the most part, the ones that I had on display, I got rid of them.
Okay. Okay. Well, you can, if you're watching, you can see. I've got some more on the other side too. But
Yeah.
when we moved to this current house, I bet you there's 2 boxes in the basement in a storage area where it's like, nope, these are the ones I'm putting up, and that's it.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you saved some of them. What are some of your favorites, and why do they mean what they do to you?
Yeah, I saved I saved, Marty means a lot to me, so I saved a Marty one. Lee May means a lot to me, so I saved a Lee May bobblehead. Tucker Barnhart's a friend of mine, so I saved a Tucker Barnhart. And then some of I think the Homer double no hitter. I was
Mhm.
at both of those games. One of
Okay.
them was in Pittsburgh, one of them was here. I
Yeah.
happened to be on that trip in Pittsburgh, so that one is great because I get to keep that one. I don't know if you know Randy Marsh, the former umpire for in the National League. He's become a friend of mine. So he has a bobblehead that has where he's calling the safe call on the slide, the Sid Bream slide in the
Oh, okay. Yeah.
91 NLCS. So I kept that one. Um, there are a few like that I've kept and that have sentimental value that I just wanted to hold on to.
Sure. Sure. Well, I understand it completely. I've got some that are my friend Matt Andrews used to call the games for
Yeah,
Louisville, and so he gave me the collection of the Joey Votto, Homer Bailey, Jay Bruce, some of those. So them in
yeah,
bats uniforms is kind of a nice
yeah,
thing for me. And then yeah, there's obviously some you like more than others, and that
yep.
mean more to you. Um, I was told to ask you about the Denny Neagle Barry Bonds story. I don't know if that's safe for work. If it's not, we'll move on. But
No, it's good. So this was when I was on the ground crew working on the pitcher's mound, and my really close friend Justin and I were in charge of the mound. Um, he's one of the guys that helped get me the job, so I owe a debt of gratitude to him. But this was in the middle of the fifth. The ground crew would come out, change the bases, sweep up around the first, third, and home, and
Mhm.
second, I should say too. After they changed the bases, we'd also sweep around the pitcher's mound, which would, after after the guys would play, a lot of the dirt and clay would get onto the carpet of the surface. So we would just go out and tidy it up so it would look nice. So we'd go out. We went out on this particular day. The Reds were playing the Giants, and this is when Barry Bonds was, a complete machine for the Giants.
Mhm.
And so Justin and we ran out. We're sweeping around the mound, the circle of the mound, sweeping all the clay back onto the mound while Denny Neagle is warming up. And at this point in the game, Denny, this is only the fifth inning. Denny had given up 2 home runs already to Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
So as we're sweeping up, he stops warming up and he looks at us, and we thought we were in trouble. He's like, can you guys tell me how to get Bonds out? We're like, sorry, dude, we know how to sweep the clay onto the mound, but we don't know how to get Barry Bonds out. So
That's awesome.
that was a funny one for us. Like,
It's funny. You might not have been there yet. In May or so of '97, I played hooky from Ohio State and went down to a game. Or no, it'd be not, you would have been there then. It was May of '98 because I graduated high school in '97. So May of '98, I play hooky from school, go down to a businessman special, and a young man named Eddie Priest
oh
comes
yeah,
up
I
for the
remember.
Reds,
Is he
makes a
left-hander?
start.
I think.
I think he was. Makes a start. I think he got Barry Bonds out twice, and he was
Hmm.
kind of cruising a little bit. And in the fifth or so inning, maybe the sixth, Bonds comes up again and hits one off the facade of the green seats. And unfortunately for Eddie Priest, the next start fell at San Francisco. I think he might have got the win that day and things like
Yeah.
that. You know how sometimes it's home and home.
Right.
And the next start fell against the Giants as well, and they'd figured him out by then. But I'll never forget going through that game. He got Barry Bonds out a couple times. This is great. And then I'm
Yeah.
telling you, it wasn't a red seater, but partially because it was such a line, it got out
Yeah.
of there so fast and
Oh, yeah.
clanged off that facade. And yeah, you might have even been there that day. But I
What
was like, oh my goodness.
one of
Um,
my prized possessions that I actually have from my time in the ground on the ground crew was, if you guys, and I'm again going back to Riverfront Stadium days, you guys will probably remember, like, there was a wall, the outfield wall didn't butt up against the fans. So
sure.
some home runs just went over the wall and fans couldn't get them, but
Mhm.
we had access to that tunnel. So one game, Bonds hit a home run off Pete Harnish, and it went over the wall. And Bonds was one of my favorite players, so I ran back and got the home run ball. I still have that home run ball from that
That's
day. I
awesome.
have the box score and everything. So,
That's really cool.
and it's
Yeah,
before, like, you could, like, authenticate stuff. So, like,
sure.
people might look at it and say, oh, it's just a regular ball, but it
Oh no, it
actually
means
has.
something to you. And
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
But that's part of baseball, right? I mean, there's so many, even the stats themselves, like there's so many things about baseball that mean something to baseball fans that maybe
Yeah.
another sport wouldn't have something like that. Well, okay, so if you don't mind talking a little bit about some of those players, let's stick with 1999. You were on the
Okay.
grounds crew, so you were down on the field, you were close up and personal. Could you tell me about any of the players that stick out to you, as far as you've already told a few stories about like Michael Tucker and things like
Yeah.
that, but some things that might stick out, stories or just what kind of guys they were and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, from that year, I still have, a lot of great memories and some friendships that came out of that time. Like, Dimitri Young's one of my favorite people. He and I correspond often. He's been to my house. To see my kids. Pete Harnish was awesome. He's one of the greatest of all time in my book, as far as personalities go. Along with Nagel, Pete was really gracious to us, and his kindness will never be forgotten. And I've lost touch with him since those days, but he was awesome, and he's the one that sticks out probably the most. Dimitri, as I said, Sean Casey. We still have a great relationship. He'll Every time I talk to him, he'll always bring up my ground crew days and his time there. Danny Graves, of course, is when he left the game, he became a member of the media, which our paths again crossed, and he's a great friend. I'm probably forgetting a lot of people, but Pokey Reese was awesome on that team. Also a tremendous human being. Got to see him a couple years ago when he came back for a function with the Reds Hall of Fame, and it was great seeing him. Um, Aaron Boone, the
Yeah.
manager of the Yankees now. Probably most of the people who are watching this probably know him as the manager of the Yankees rather than the former Reds third baseman, but super human being as well. Always great to see him when the Yankees are in town, or if we go there, or if, where we're at an event like the winter meetings. I'll probably see him. Just so many great people on that team, and it was kind of anchored by a guy that was probably, you know, maybe considered in some circles not the nicest guy in the world, Greg Vaughn, but he actually was amazing.
Hmm.
And he was kind of a guy that, he was an old school guy. I should say Barry Larkin too. I can't forget the Hall of Famer. I
Right,
see
right.
Barry every time I'm, at work in the summer. So, and he's, we have a great rapport together too. So Barry's part of that group too.
You go back
But
with Pokey Reese. Pokey was on the show here, and I couldn't believe, like, even on opening day, he was the grand marshal of the parade, and he texted me, and I'm like,
yeah,
we just met a few weeks ago on a call like this, and I'm like,
yeah,
and he's
that's
like,
him. That's
yeah,
Pokey.
just down to earth, real good guy.
Yeah. But going back to Greg Vaughn, like I think he was the key to that team, and I think once he left the team, as well as Mike Cameron, I think once those two guys left in 2000, it became something. It wasn't the same team, and I think I think the team, if they would have stuck together, I think, and that means, I mean, obviously that means you don't make the junior trade, and
Right.
it's easy to play Monday morning GM, but looking back, maybe the team would have been better off if they would have stuck with Mike Cameron and Pokey and Brett Tomko and those guys. Who's to say? But the team was Jeffrey Hammonds in right field. Another guy was just absolutely what a great guy to have what a great extra guy to have on your team, who went on to the Brewers and became their highest paid player and superstar there. But for us, he was a crucial part of the team, not necessarily on the front lines, but you needed Jeffrey Hammonds, and just absolutely amazing.
I saw Jeffrey Hammonds up at Wrigley Field I was just probably out of high school. Well, it was been that next summer he got traded for Willie Green, and I had nothing against Willie Green, but I'm a kid at the time, and all you hear on WLW and places like that was people were tired of Willie Green because
Right.
Jim Bowden kept giving him chance after chance. Hey, he hit 26 home runs one year. He did okay, but Hammonds had just gotten traded for Willie, and I was down by the rail at the dugout, and that day actually Sean Casey came up and chatted with me and some things like that. And I remember Hammonds walks up and I said something like, "Hey, we're so happy you're here. You're way better than Willie Green." And he just smiled and just laughed.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could tell. But and even Greg Vaughn, I've talked to 5 or so guys from that team this year since we started this podcast, and nobody has ever said Barry Larkin wasn't a leader. That's not the point. The
Right.
point is Greg Vaughn came in and was a different kind of leader.
Exactly.
And grabbed a hold of that clubhouse. And I still go back to my memory of when they were about to break spring training. They may have even driven up to like Orlando, where ESPN had their Sunday Night Baseball show station at the time. But Greg Vaughn and Mike Cameron together, and Cameron had only been in the league like a year at that point.
Mm-hmm.
They went on Baseball Tonight like the Sunday before the season started, before they came north, and it was like, my goodness, he's a leader. Like I'd never even seen him talk before.
It's
And
funny that like the first thing that both of us kind of remember about Greg Vaughn is being a leader.
Yeah.
But he had a great year that year. It's like, he had a great year. And Mike Cameron was just absolutely amazing in center field. One of the best center fielders I've ever seen in a Reds uniform. It was those kind of guys that, and like you said, Greg was a different kind of leader, where Barry was, he led by example. Vaughn was more of a guy that would get in your face if he thought you weren't, playing as hard as or as good as you could play. And a lot of people are critical of that way, whether for good or for better or worse nowadays. But it worked for that '99 team, and a lot of players to this day will. Probably Pokey will be one of tell you that that Vaughn had a very good set a good example for him.
Yeah, he did, and he talked about the example of going out as a up and coming shortstop before he played second base at a Gold Glove level, seeing what Barry Larkin did, following what he was doing. Even though he's a superstar, he's still out there taking ground balls, all that stuff. But then, yeah, he talked about Greg Vaughn kind of grabbing a hold of him a few times, and it doesn't matter if we, if we win, you can go for 4, but if we lose, I don't want to hear, that you got 4 hits, that kind of thing. Yep. That's pretty cool. What about I guess, so were you on the grounds crew the night of the Mets game, the playoff?
I was, yeah. Oh my God.
Game, so to speak. Yeah. I got down there too, and certainly the stadium sold out almost immediately that morning. What a mess, though, right? I mean, coming from Milwaukee and, getting in their beds, if at all, 5, 6 a.m. in the morning, and then having to play the Mets, who already they had been sent to Cincinnati. I always joke they had their Montgomery Inn and graders and went to bed around 9 p.m. and got up the next morning to find out if they had to play or not.
Yeah, it was a mess, and it shouldn't have never happened. It was something that was really unfortunate and should have been, I think, in hindsight, been handled differently. But a fun story on that day, I believe that was a Sunday, when the Reds were playing that final game in Milwaukee, because the Bengals were in town. They had played a game, so the ground crew was there, and we had to convert the field from football to baseball, back to baseball, for that specifically for that one game playoff. So if the Reds lose that game in Milwaukee, we just kind of throw our rakes down and like just go home, because there was no point of us continuing the conversion of the field. So in Riverfront Stadium on the speakers, I don't know why the game wasn't televised and we got to see it on the jumbotron, but we heard they piped the game in, Marty and Joe from Milwaukee,
Mm-hmm.
and we're listening to the game as we're working, and the conversions were, maddening, because it was a lot of hard work. So we're putting the pitcher's mound back together. Reds win. It's raining on us at the time. We're getting rained on. The Reds win, so we're like, yes, we get the season continues. We're going to play the Mets. We're going to get them here, hopefully win. So the next day, we don't get a lot of sleep, just like the team. Come back for the next day to get things ready for what turned out to be one of the most amazing atmospheres, that I've ever experienced in Reds baseball history, or in my time. But places sold out, rocking and rolling like never, more so than any opening day that we've ever been to. Just an incredible atmosphere. And you ended up having, like, and no disrespect to him, but Steve Paris was, having to, shut down this Mets team that just couldn't lose at the time.
Right.
And so it just didn't work out. There was some tears shed on the ground crew.
Mm-hmm.
It was, everybody was, forlorn and not doing so well after that result, especially after, I think, the name Edgardo Alfonso will live in infamy, for Reds fans from that time period. But yeah, the fact that the Reds got there was, rewarding in itself, and just looking back on it from after the dust settled, looking back on it, just an incredible, incredible fun season.
Yeah, Cam Miller had his retrospective kind of little podcast he put out, and he played Marty's kind of post-game outro, and Marty talked about not accusing that team of, not being successful. Don't say they weren't successful. They did more than anybody could have imagined. To your point earlier, I was at opening day in '95 after the strike ended, and I was at the playoffs against the Braves that fall, and they didn't sell out Riverfront either time because of the bitterness over the strike.
Mhm.
And even in the playoff game, it was a close, low-scoring game. It could have been, a raucous atmosphere. It just wasn't.
Yeah.
That day in 1990, it felt like that entire, because the Reds really took till about late May to early June to really start going that year. And it felt like everything was building up. It took a while for people to come to the games as much and things like that still. But by that one game, you're right. We were but like, you could barely hear yourself think even before the game started. And it was a little dank and damp and cold and all that. But I'll never forget the only negative, and it's just funny though. Somebody was throwing quarters at Ricky Henderson, who was playing left field. And Ricky didn't get mad. Ricky didn't do anything crazy. He just picked them up and he'd look at it and he'd put it in his back pocket. He kept every quarter that was thrown at him.
Yeah. I think another thing about that team, and I know we're talking a lot about the '99 team, but you have to look, if you look at the day by days and compare it with the Astros too.
Mm-hmm.
The Reds were, 90 some wins, but the Astros would not lose that last month. So
That's right.
the Reds could not gain any ground and the Astros couldn't shake us. It
Mm-hmm.
just became a heavyweight fight where we're just trading punches. You look at the score the next day, it's like Astros won again. It's like they won like 9 in a row or something like that. You couldn't gain any ground on them. And that was frustrating. But that goes to show you how great that, the Reds couldn't, nobody was giving any freebies to anybody. And that's what kind of made it so special was you had to go against, you had to keep winning, even though you knew that this juggernaut in
Yeah.
Houston was winning too. And then you get, the Mets couldn't lose at some point. So, it was just fun. It was just a great, it was for traditional baseball lovers, it was just an amazing season.
Eddie Taubensee talked to me about the fact that while it's true what you're saying about the Astros, the Reds Astros head to head were pretty even, pretty good. But he said we really wanted to get in there. He said because look at the series against the Diamondbacks and the season series against the Braves, and you look at those, especially because the Diamondbacks came on one of those West Coast swings when year after year the Reds would lose on the West Coast swings, but
Yeah.
that time they didn't. They became the big road machine, as Hal McCoy dubbed them. And he says we dominated the Braves and the Diamondbacks, and we weren't afraid of the Astros. And so that was the thing. They just needed to get in, and they didn't. Two more quick things, I'll let you go.
Yeah.
I'm going to use him as an example because who wouldn't at this point? He's going to the Hall of Fame. In your career, and I see this as an adult fan myself, it's really cool to have gotten to be there when Joey Votto arrived, and you worked there, and then through his entire career as a Red, as it turned out. Can you take me through that and kind of the evolution of him as a player and maybe even as a person, kind of what you observed over all those years?
Joey was one of the most interesting Reds that was here when I had the good fortune to work with. Like you said, I saw his career begin, and I saw him retire here, or end here, I should say. But yeah, he was, he came up as a guy that you weren't sure he was going to be as good as he was, but just an incredible work ethic, and the way that he kept in shape and kept his body going, and, for the most part stayed healthy, dealt with a lot of personal tumult. Um, he became a really special person here, and he had a really great relationship with the guys behind the scene, like Rob Butcher, Gary Wayhoff, our traveling secretary, Rick Stowe, our clubhouse guy. He always treated those guys so fair, and was so gracious to those guys. And that's what I respected most about him. Not so much what he did on the field, but just how the way he treated people was pretty awesome. And especially in the things that he had to deal with in his personal life too was pretty amazing. One of my favorite Joey story that I have is when he won the MVP in 2010. He lived in Sarasota at the time when it was announced, and I got the Reds flew me down to Sarasota just for that day to handle his media stuff. So like whenever he did all of his media appearances after the announcement from like his back porch in Sarasota, and I was there to help facilitate that. So, and then after it was over, I flew back home, and so that was really cool, and it's something I'll be able to tell my kids about when they're old enough to understand what that was. So it was cool, and I think Joey's a Hall of Famer, and a lot of people will say he was he and Adam Dunn kind of brought the whole, like, he was a great analytical player.
Mm-hmm.
He knew how to play that game, and he knew he was one of the first players that I knew on the Reds that really cared about his on-base percentage and cared about his slugging percentage and OPS, but also cared about his batting average, and and he wanted to drive runs in, and he wanted to hit home runs when he could. But he knew all of those stats, and a lot of players don't know like what WOBA is and things like that, but Joey does, and he wanted to try to maximize his value as much as he could. Now, I will say this: Joey wasn't the most exciting player for me to watch on the field, but that's because he did things his way, and he did them the best way to make himself better. And that's something that I respect too. Like, he wasn't a base stealer. He played first base, which was kind of a position that doesn't get a lot of doesn't make a lot of highlights on ESPN. But he walked a lot, which a lot of people will oh, he just got on base again. He didn't drive, he didn't hit a home run or whatever. But I say that knowing how great he was and how much he utilized all of the things I mentioned before to become in my opinion, a Hall of Fame player. And I think he will be in Cooperstown.
Yeah, it's pretty perfect for the 162 game grind of,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
might not see the Billy Hamilton or the Ryan Friel. I remember some of the catches he made and things like that. You might not see some, although he made some really cool throws and things like that
Oh
at first
yeah,
base
yeah.
that
Oh,
we all
he definitely had his share of excitement.
he
That's for
worked at it. I guess the last thing on him, as a in someone in your job, did you see him kind of evolve? Like as fans, we saw him come out of his shell a little bit with social media, and maybe it was a little different with Jim Day and other things he did the last 3 to 5 years. Did you always know that Joey Votto, or was that new to you as well?
It
Kind of
was
when
new to me as well. I think what you guys saw, his evolution, was all we saw it at the same time and in the same way. And
okay,
I think as he became older and more mature, he was always, he again, and I go back and I don't mean to keep harping on this, but he dealt with things in his personal life that doesn't really doesn't make you want to like come out of his shell, and rightfully so. But as he got older and kind of matured a little bit, he wanted, I think, and this is me trying to figure
yeah,
out Joey
sure.
Votto, but I feel like he tried to make things more fun. I think he wanted to be. I think he wanted to have more fun in the game rather than just showing up at the park every day, getting 3 hits, getting on base 4 times, and then going home. I think
Hmm.
he wanted to make it more interesting, and I think he did, and I think that was part of what he wanted to do, and it was fun to watch.
Yeah, certainly was. All right, last thing, I'll let you go. We don't spend a whole lot of time looking forward on this show. It's more of a looking back at our memories and things like that. But since I have you here, I imagine the vibe around the staff, around the organization since Terry Francona came on is a bit different. Can you describe that from the inside a little bit and tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm terrible at predicting. Like, I think in 2022, I think I went on record saying that this team has a chance to compete, and they ended up losing 100 games. So
Yeah.
I'm not good at that stuff, but I can tell you, like what you just asked about Terry Francona, the 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 morale here in the ballpark in the front office is super high, and everyone that works here that has the good fortune of working for the Cincinnati Reds, they're excited, and that includes me. And anytime you bring a guy in that has been to the World Series 3 times, won 2 of them, um, that can lead your team, that wants to lead your team, and who is your manager, that's unbelievable, and it's a terrific feeling to have, and just to have him wearing that Reds cap and taking it seriously and wanting to go back to the World Series with my team is pretty special, and I feel like the fans feel that way too.
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
with him, again, you don't want to put too much pressure on the manager because there's only so much a manager can do. I know people like to kind of nitpick the in-game moves, which fair or not, is what it is. But this is a guy that your manager needs to be your leader as well, and a leader, in my opinion, with successful experience. And I don't know if you could bring a better guy in, than Terry Francona, who's been there, who led that 2022 Cleveland team to the
Mhm.
far into the playoffs, into the World Series, and wasn't supposed to win at all. I think they had the youngest team in baseball and was the youngest team ever to advance in the postseason at some point. I know there's some statistics out there that I'm probably mangling, but he wasn't supposed to do anything with that team, and he did. And that's the kind of stuff that gets me excited about him leading this team. And I think this team that he takes over is better than some of those late 20
Mhm.
or early 2020 Cleveland teams. Which if he can lead those teams into the playoffs, into the World Series, it kind of, why not us type of feeling. So
Yeah.
that's what we're riding that high right now.
Well, and that's where, without disrespecting David Bell and the people before, if you look the last 4 or 5 years, it's usually been that August, September time that things maybe didn't go as well. Terry Francona always seemed, including like a 22-game winning streak at
Yeah.
one point, that August, September time for him was always up. So that's kind of what you're
Yeah.
hoping to see replicate.
And that's the thing too. If you look at his winning percentage post All-Star game, like his career winning percentage, it's higher than pre All-Star game. So
Yeah.
that fits exactly what you just said.
No doubt. Well, Jamie, thanks so much for joining me. It's been a blast to get to know you a little bit and talk to you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I had a great time. Thank you.
Well, have a good day, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Oh, you left.